From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. And coming up today, K-State's Justin Waggoner will talk about selecting the right mineral product to provide the cow herd while on summer pasture. He says that mineral choice should correlate with the cow's productivity status and with the nutritional condition of the grass itself. Then K-State's Robin Reid, Nadine, Sigle, and Robin Eubank-Callis will talk about resources available from K-State Research and Extension for farm families for making contingency plans in the midst of the COVID-19 situation in 3 areas: farm and ranch information security, farm family record keeping, and business continuity planning. And K-State's Gus Vanderhoeven checks in later with another Stop, Look, and Listen. That and more coming up on this Agriculture Today.
For information on threatening weather, you should depend on the National Weather Service and their broadcast on NOAA Weather Radio. NOAA Weather Radio is an all-hazards radio network that provides up-to-the-minute weather information, including life-saving warnings anytime, day or night. NOAA Weather Radio also broadcasts information on man-made disasters, such as chemical spills, amber alerts, or other national emergencies. For the National Weather Service, I'm Bill Curtis.
You're listening to Agriculture Today. There are so many aspects of the COVID-19 disruption that are affecting agricultural producers, rural dwellers. What we want to do on this segment of the broadcast is look at contingency planning and some resources that farm families and rural business operators and others can turn to lend some guidance in making important planning decisions amidst all of the uncertainty out there. We're joined by 3 individuals now. Robin Reid is an agricultural economist, K-State Research and Extension. Also with us, Robin Eubank-Callis, the Extension Family and Consumer Sciences agent in Barber County, and Nadine Sigle, an Extension Associate in Community Vitality based in Osborne County. Thanks to the 3 of you for joining us. Robin Reid, what we'll talk about today, the extra challenges brought on by the COVID-19 situation and some things that you and others are observing right now affecting our rural folk.
Sure, Eric. So I'll just start out. A team of us here at K-State Research and Extension were formed to look at the idea of succession planning and how we can facilitate that between our farm businesses and any rural business out there. But as we got together during this COVID-19 crisis, we got to thinking, well, what do our farm businesses and rural businesses and our families need right now? And one of the things that we came up with to kind of go along with succession planning is contingency planning. Really having a good contingency plan in place is vital at any time, no matter what the circumstances. We're just, in a different time right now with this pandemic. So it's a good time to think of, well, if I did get sick or, an employee or something changed with my current business situation, how would we continue our operations? And that's what contingency planning is all about, just making sure information is put together so somebody can pick up and continue on with your normal operations in the event that something in your business would happen.
That said, then we'll tackle this in a trio of ways, actually, looking at the farming operation itself and making contingency plans there, the family living side of it, as well as overall business planning. We will stay with you, Robin, and talk about a resource or two that you'd recommend to family farm operations in working through the planning process amid what we're dealing with currently.
So our team at K-State searched out many options and came up with the 3 that we're going to talk about as the simplest and most relevant tools out there. So for farm operations, what we came up with was a tool that was developed actually by a women in agriculture team out of Purdue University. And this is an Excel spreadsheet that's free to download. All of these resources are on our KSRE COVID-19 page. But this provides a structure for gathering critical personal and farm business information. So as I said, in the event of a crisis, a family member, a friend, or neighbor would have all the information in one place that they can use to continue the operation. So some examples on this Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, In the personal section, you'll see personal business contact lists, where important documents are kept, and a non-farm personal inventory. Specifically on the farm side of the business, information about how the farm business is structured, where the farm inventory, or all the assets that are owned by the farm and what they are. Important documents, business contacts for the farm, employee information, really everything that you could encompass in the business. There's a different sheet in the spreadsheet to list all of this information. Now, along with this, we also thought this is a great resource that you should probably look at and update, every few months or a couple times a year. But then we also wanted something that's more specific to what's going on day to day on the farm. So actually, our extension agent in the Twin Creeks district, Alyssa Rippey-May, came up with this farm chore inventory worksheet. And this is a fairly simple, just list what livestock you have, where they are located, and then their daily needs. So feed rations, water, anything on a day-to-day basis that, like I said, a neighbor or friend would be able to pick up and go out and take care of those chores in the event that the operator would get sick or not be available for some reason. And even along those lines, like I said, this is a good idea, if you were going to go on a vacation, or if you have a new employee that's starting and you want to give them an instruction sheet, it's really structured just to be a day-to-day, this is what needs to be done on the operation. So those two resources to me work kind of hand in hand. One is kind of the big overall contingency planning steps and tool, and then the other one's just the day-to-day farm chores. And both of these resources, like I said, are on our K-State Research and Extension COVID-19 page.
That's for the farming operation. Robin Eubank-Callis, want to bring you in here and talk about the family living side of it and resources that might be valuable in these uncertain times. What can you share with us, Robin?
Yes, the team that Robin Reid talked about chose Our Valuable Records. And what it is that it's very similar to what she was talking about for the farm, but this is aimed all at your family's record. It includes things such as who your professional services might be, like an accountant or a lawyer. It also includes lists of properties and even down to the details of accounts that you have and passwords for those accounts. This one is designed as a PDF that you can also type right in and save it, and then print out pages and store offsite, and then just update it as you need. So this is one that's also great to have right now when you're worried about possible emergencies, but it's the family contingency plan that you can have available any time of the year.
And one could put information in there that is as simple as they'd like or as elaborate as they'd like. This is very much crafted to the individual family's needs.
Very true, Eric. The great thing is you can just fill in what you need and what's relevant to your family.
And that is also at the K-State Research and Extension COVID-19 website, correct?
Correct. And it's under the family section on that website. It's where you'll find it.
So it's called Our Valuable Records. Check that out. Nadine, Sigle, if you would speak to the other resource we highlight today. This is expressly on business planning, and all know what trials and tribulations so many small businesses have gone through in recent weeks. What do these support materials have to offer here?
Well, what we have online is the business continuity plan, and this is taken from a website called ready.gov/business. And in the business continuity plan, it divides it up into several different sections. As you're looking at a business disruption that is happening with the pandemic now, one of the first things that they really recommend is that you go through a business impact analysis. And so on this same website, underneath the business category, they have a really nice worksheet for you to use where you could identify the length of time that you think that you might have your business be disrupted, and then go through some of the things like the operational costs. How much do you think you'll lose as far as sales and the effects of that negative cash flow might have on your business? As you do that, then you want to go on ahead and identify some of the other risk factors that might be present, How is this going to affect your people within your business, the property that you have, the management, your environment? And then try to assign some overall risk ratings to them as you go through the process. Then make sure that you do some other assessment of other resources that you have available to you within the community or within your state to get a hold of. Also, we've talked to the Small Business Administration some, and their recommendation is writing up a good desktop plan of operation. And by doing your desktop SOP, you put in all those different things that you would do on a normal day-to-day basis if somebody were to get sick, where things are located, different action steps that would need to be taken, who your banks are, who are all your vendors and the different creditors and things, different people that you work with. Again, it's the same type of thing that the two Robins have talked about. Now is a really good time for us to stop and put these records into place and get them drawn up and put it together.
And Robin Reid, utilizing these tools is advisable just about any time, as has been said, but it's accentuated even more in times like these.
It's just important when you think about even a day-to-day operation without a pandemic, that if something were to happen to the operator, how would that business continue? And so this, again, is really important no matter what you're facing, for your family members especially, too, to make sure you have everything in order, that somebody can easily obtain those records and be able to know what to do in that situation.
And to remind once more, all of these that have been described right here are on that website at K-State Research and Extension, correct?
Yes. So if you go to ksre.ksu.edu, you can't miss our COVID-19 page. It shows up really big, and all you got to do is click on it and look under the different categories that we talked about: agricultural, family, and business.
Very well. ksre.ksu.edu. And thanks all for going over this with us.
Thank you, Eric.
Along with us here via online chat from K-State Research and Extension, Robin Reid, Robin Eubank-Callis, and Nadine Sigle. We'll return shortly on Agriculture Today.
A social distancing tip.
Keeping your distance from others is important in slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are some fun things to do alone. Read a book, take a walk, unpack your suitcase from that trip you took last September, paint a self-portrait, catch up on a TV series, do a puzzle. Remember, we should all stay home to lower the risk for everyone. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #AloneTogether. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
This is the K-State Radio Network, and welcome once again to Agriculture Today. Well, it's pasture turnout time for many a cow-calf producer out there, and gearing up for it, we have some thoughts today on providing the proper mineral supplementation to the cow herd on summer grass. We turn now to Justin Waggoner via internet chat. Justin, as you know, is a beef systems specialist with K-State Research and Extension. We'll get into some of the main ingredients that go into a good cow supplementation program, Justin, but just stepping back and talking of the value of the mineral program for cows on grass. It's a pretty important matter, isn't it?
Yeah, as Eric, as we look at, coming into the grazing season, we often think about cow nutrition programs. And once we go to green grass, usually life is pretty good for most cattlemen out there. But, in terms of where those deficiencies lie and what we can do in terms of the nutrition program to hopefully improve animal productivity and performance, really comes back to that mineral program. In Kansas, for the most part, we're very blessed. We have forages that are pretty good in most cases, really relative to other parts of the world, even in terms of their mineral profile. We are very blessed in that way just by nature of the geography of where we live.
Where to start on providing the proper mineral mix, if you will? The first thing you say to producers, you tell us, is to look at the product tag to see what's in it before you invest.
Yeah, that's right, Eric. And part of that comes back to, just like a lot of other things, I think for cattlemen today, we have more options out there in terms of products that are targeted for, maybe a gestation mineral, maybe a breeding mineral. They go by lots of different names per se, and there's lots of different products to choose from. the only way we can begin to sort some of those products out and see what fits a particular situation or what does not fit a particular situation is to look at that mineral tag. There's a lot of good information on it. Ironically, the information that I typically advise producers that are going to buy that to start is actually on the bottom of that mineral tag. And that gets at the target consumption level. How much mineral do we need to supply? The two common consumption levels they're kind of out there in the industry would either be a 4 ounce per head per day consumption or a 2 ounce per head per day consumption. As we look at the cost of those products, obviously, if that could be a big factor. If one is targeting a 4 ounce consumption and is a cheaper mineral, you're going to go through more of that mineral. If one is on the lower end of the dosage, but yet is a little bit higher, we could be dealing with. So really kind of that plays back into the economics of it to some extent to pay attention to what that target consumption level should be. The other thing is, as we get to delivering that mineral, are we achieving that target consumption? A lot of times I get the opportunity to come back and handicap production problems, and that's one of the questions I'll ask is, what is your mineral consumption? Are you getting that target consumption on a particular product? The other thing that's on that mineral tag that you need to be aware of is the salt content. Is that mineral formulated as the sole source of salt to be out there to those cattle, or is it more of a supplemental level? We used to talk about the old 12-12-12 mineral, 12% calcium, 12% phosphorus, 12% salt. That used to be pretty common. That one's still available, but I'd say it's probably less common as what it is today. But it points producers to the 12% phosphorus and the 12% salt that's in there. The other information that's on that mineral tag is the mineral sources, where the calcium, the phosphorus, the magnesium, where those are coming from. We've got different products that are out there today. We've got inorganic sources. Those would be the oxides and the sulfates. Generally, we'd like to see more sulfates. They're generally higher in bioavailability to the cattle than those oxide forms. If you look at now, we've got organic sources of minerals, where a particular mineral is bound most commonly to an amino acid. So zinc methionine is the one that comes to mind there. There's lots of different products that are out there. Those, if we look at the research, may have some degree of higher bioavailability than some of the other products that are out there. So just pay attention to what those sources are and kind of see what's out there and what's actually in that mineral product that they're buying.
Justin, very generally now, what is typically the most limiting mineral that producers need to target when they're selecting a supplement?
Yeah, so in most grazing beef systems, the macro mineral that we're most deficient in would be phosphorus. And that's, one of the most common mineral deficiencies across the globe. It actually typically kind of surprises producers. They tend to think that our knowledge of mineral nutrition, especially for something like grazing beef cows, is relatively complete. When in actuality, we don't know a whole lot about it. When you take into account the multiple different interactions that can occur with different minerals and how one can tie up or bind another in the rumen, can get pretty complicated in a hurry. Even if we look at mineral requirements, we have 23 minerals that we know are important for beef cattle production. We only have absolute requirements for 16 of those minerals. If we were to break that down further, the ones that we probably see the most common deficiencies in would be phosphorus, sodium, magnesium, and copper. There's some others out there, but those are usually kind of the top 4 that I think about, and we could kind of split those on any given day as to which one might get more priority. But phosphorus, by and large, is always going to be the top slot there.
You say, though, when it comes to reproduction performance, that copper in specific draws some important attention.
So as I look at, we've talked a little bit about the mineral tag, and then we kind of get into that next category of does this particular mineral product fit my situation? And really the two things that I use in my criteria is I look at the phosphorus first and then the copper, especially as we're looking at what I'd call kind of a gestating, lactating type cow or a breeding mineral. Copper is also one of the trace minerals that we often see an antagonism in between sulfur, molybdenum, and copper is very common. We do run into that in some areas of the state in Kansas. And so that's kind of my second tier of kind of looking at that copper in addition to the phosphorus as well to make that decision.
But the point here overall is that one needs to tailor their selection to the production stage of the animal.
Yes, absolutely. And the phosphorus kit is a great guide and a way to do that. So there's really two aspects here and we can't, really have this discussion without, maybe touching a little bit on phosphorus, the requirement side. So, cattle have an absolute requirement, but we're also getting phosphorus that's coming in to the diet from the forage base that the cows are consuming. And so the mineral is the supplement at that point. So forages change with the growing season. It's typically highest in the early spring and then the lowest in the fall. Ranges anywhere in Kansas. We've got a wide variety of native ranges here in the state. But, typically the phosphorus content is going to bracket 0.1 to 0.2% on a dry matter basis. So if we take our knowledge of that and we say we got a 1,350-pound cow that's going to consume 2.2% of her body weight, if we look at just maintenance phosphorus requirements, it's going to take a mineral that contains 6 to 8% phosphorus to meet those maintenance needs. Given that range of phosphorus content that we would see in our forages, if we kind of look at a cow that's going to be more on the lactating side, and there is a scale here based on lactation potential and how much milk those cows are going to produce. Typically, we'd be looking at a mineral content that's going to need to be somewhere between 8 and 10% phosphorus to cover our needs at that point on a cow that's producing anywhere from 20 to 30 pounds of milk at peak lactation. And so really looking at the phosphorus content level can really put us a guide as to, well, is this a maintenance mineral that we should be using during the winter months? Or is this a mineral that's maybe going to fit a cow that's lactating, that's going to be breeding? And typically we'd like to see a little higher phosphorus level in those cows just because those requirements do go up. The other factor that kind of comes into this is if we were supplementing a byproduct type feed stuff, we can get away with maybe having a little lower phosphorus level in our mineral. We talked a little bit about copper. That can be one that cows, regardless of whether their maintenance requirement is 10 parts per million per day of copper, and that doesn't change when they become a lactating cow. That requirement actually stays the same. Mineral products can either be formulated to deliver 100% or sometimes 150% of the NRC requirement for a particular element like copper. That 1,350-pound cow, to provide 100% of her requirement, we would need a mineral that contains 1,200 parts per million of copper. And so that can be another good guideline for producers in terms of things that are on that mineral tag, quick and easy. Hey, this mineral at a 4-ounce consumption is going to meet 100% of that cow's requirements for copper. Now, the obvious question that comes along with that is, do we always need to meet 100% of that requirement for copper? We're obviously going to have some that's going to come from the diet. And that's absolutely right. We would not necessarily have to meet that, but that can be a really good guideline to look and say, okay, where are we at in terms of this copper status in that mineral as well, in addition to looking at those phosphorus levels and some of the other things we've mentioned in terms of the tag and the target consumptions and those type things.
Well, consider once again your cow herd's specific needs in as far as their stage of productivity, and then couple that with what you know about the content of that mineral product that you'll be supplementing with. Timely information right here. Justin, take care. Thanks. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Eric.
That from Beef Systems Specialist, K-State Research and Extension, based in Southwest Kansas, Justin Waggoner, on cow herd mineral supplementation selection as those animals head to grass here very soon now. You're listening to Agriculture Today.
When you are in need of timely, reliable, and trusted information, K-State Research and Extension is here. Whether it's organizing people, information, or resources, they have the necessary tools. Community comes first for K-State Research and Extension. For more information and to connect with your county's extension agents, visit www.ksre.k-state.edu.
This is the K-State Radio Network, and you're tuned to Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. Today's agricultural news headlines coming your way now, courtesy in part of DTN. And unfortunately, more deflating news for the hog industry this morning. Tyson Foods has announced that it is suspending operations indefinitely at its large Iowa pork processing plant at Waterloo, linked to a growing coronavirus outbreak. The company warning that the closing of that Waterloo plant would be a big blow to hog farmers and potentially disrupt the nation's pork supply. Tyson had kept that plant open in recent days over the objections of the mayor and other local officials. That plant employs nearly 3,000 workers and can process about 19,500 hogs per day. That's about 4% of the U.S. pork processing capacity. More than 180 infections had been confirmed among plant workers earlier this week there. Officials expect that number to rise. In addition to those infected, hundreds of workers had stayed home from work out of the fear of catching the virus. Now, several other hog packing plants have temporarily closed after large outbreaks, including the Smithfield plant at Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and a JBS plant at Worthington, Minnesota. Tyson Fresh Meats President Steve Stauffer said in a statement that the closure would have significant ramifications beyond our company, in his words, since it's part of a supply chain that includes farmers, truckers, distributors, and grocers. That announcement came one day after the Black Hawk County Board of Health called on the company or Republican Governor Kim Reynolds to temporarily close the plant. That board was warning that its continued operation would exacerbate the spread of the virus throughout that community. The Commodity Futures Trading Commission is holding a public meeting today via teleconference of its Agricultural Advisory Committee. The panel will hear from USDA Secretary Sonny Perdue during that session, which will focus primarily on the COVID-19 situation and the impact on the agricultural markets. While noting the impact of COVID-19, the CFTC Chairman Heath Tarbert said that the CFTC's Livestock Market Task Force is monitoring activity around major market-moving events and, in his words, will continue engaging experts, regulators, and market participants. The final definition of the Waters of the United States rule has now been published in the Federal Register, and it will become final on June the 20th. The Trump administration finalized the much-anticipated redefinition of the Waters of the U.S. rule back in January, peeling back from the 2015 rule that the EPA and the Corps of Engineers seek to replace. The Navigable Waters Protection Rule, as it's called now, scraps the terms such as significant nexus and spells out 4 specific categories of waterways that will be regulated by the federal government, leaving oversight for other bodies of water to states and tribes. Under the new rule, traditional regulated bodies such as territorial seas and major rivers will fall under federal rules, as well as perennial and intermittent tributaries and certain lakes and ponds and impoundments that contribute to the flow of a navigable waterway, along with wetlands adjacent to jurisdictional waters. Now, those adjacent wetlands mean that those are touching a traditional navigable water, such as a wetland next to the Mississippi River, for example, or a wetland that may be physically separated by only a single natural feature, such as a berm. A wetland behind a levee could fall under regulation, according to an EPA official. Farm and stock watering ponds and artificial lakes will not be regulated, nor will prior converted croplands or wetlands that are not near a jurisdictional water body. USDA is reporting impressive sign-up numbers for the Farm Safety Net programs covering 2019 crops. Here's more from Gary Crawford.
How was participation in the Agriculture Risk Coverage, or ARC program, and the Price Loss Coverage program, or PLC, for 2019 crops? The answer, record high. USDA reporting the most farmer participation ever in those programs, signing 1.75 million contracts. That's more than double the average over the last 5 years. Why the increase? Richard Fordyce runs the USDA's Farm Service Agency. He told us.
Probably more awareness around ARC and PLC, and again, the fact that those programs are so important from a safety net standpoint that maybe more folks have signed up.
Now, of course, those numbers were for 2019 crops, and ARC and PLC sign up for 2020 crops is underway right now. Fordyce says even if you signed up for 2019, you've still got to confirm your participation for 2020, even though you're stuck this year with the same elections that you decided on for 2019. Sign up for this crop year needs to be done by June 30. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Well, with 80% of meals now being prepared at home, more and more consumers are looking for recipes and cooking tips online. Scarlett Higgins tells us here the beef checkoff is meeting these needs at both the state and the national level.
As home cooks have been stocking up on staples like beef over the past several weeks, the National Beef Checkoff has ramped up efforts to provide preparation tips and recipes. Part of those efforts included working with 3 popular chefs to launch a campaign encouraging consumers to make real beef their meat substitute of choice, serving up inspiring recipes like Peking chuck, Korean fried beef, and calamari. Since these new videos launched April 1st via www.beefiswhatsfordinner.com and other social media properties, there have been more than 1.2 million video views and nearly 1.5 million social engagements with the content, with a very positive consumer response. Additionally, for cooks who may not be as savvy, the checkoff started promoting quick and easy meal prep videos through YouTube and other digital advertising efforts. Since these videos launched in late March, there have been more than 5 million video views and a 51% increase in recipe-related page views on the Beef It's What's for Dinner website. The Kansas Beef Council also has heavily increased their digital advertising to emphasize more retail purchasing information and are providing recipes, beef cooking tips, and nutritional information to consumers. The content has reached more than 2 million consumers since March 16th. I'm Scarlett Higgins.
And that's a look at today's top agricultural news headlines. Ahead of the break, to bring to your attention one more time, if you happen to miss one of our regular broadcasts right here on any given day, you can catch a replay of those on our podcast service. You'll find that at agtoday.net, agtoday.net. You can also subscribe for the automatic download to your mobile device of same podcast, agtoday.net. And we'll be back in a moment on Agriculture Today.
Social distancing slows the spread of coronavirus, so if you have a fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going in. More info at coronavirus.gov. Let's all do our part, because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
This is Agriculture Today. Stop, look, and listen.
It would be interesting to know the present statistics of traffic accidents.
That's Gus Vanderhoeven of Kansas State University, with comment on life in rural Kansas.
I've been wondering, with people staying home, not driving their cars as much, how many less traffic accidents there are. I know my truck and Anneke's car are both still full with gas. We don't drive. We're not on the road. We run no risk. Yes, driving is risky. It would be interesting to know the present statistics of traffic accidents. We stay home, but we are lucky, as we have the place to walk outside on our own property, the hill. It makes the point that neighborhoods should be laid out with ample walks, safe from traffic, and healthy, interesting parks. A park not with trees placed on the grid as some early parks were laid out. A park should have open meadows and more wooded space. And a park, because it is a park, should have paths to walk or simply stroll, with places to quietly sit and look at something of interest. The interest could be kids playing or a well-placed specimen tree going through the seasons. We have our national and state parks. They're fantastic. I've visited many of our national parks and I enjoyed them. The trouble is, they're not in our backyard. I have friends whose property is adjacent to a national forest. How lucky can you be? They know where there is a bear's den. They walk the woods with a tinkling bell when they feel they need to warn the bear. But for most people, that is a dream. People are not used to nature anymore. Bears, bobcats, and snakes are scary. Many years ago, Anneke walked a close-by park called Top of the World. It is Marlet Park, here northwest of town. It is the highest point, and there are trails through the prairie landscape. She walked with our dog, a big dog, a German Shepherd. There was a small wooded grove the trail went through. The dog dashed ahead, as he was very familiar with the park and terrain. As he ran forward, people were walking from the other direction. The dog stopped. The people stopped in their tracks. When Anneke and the dog walked up to them, they briefly talked. The walkers admitted that they had frozen when the dog suddenly stood in their path, thinking it was a wolf. I've often thought about the mindset of those people. The best we can offer are coyotes. They are about, and I hear them early in the morning and the evening. They make tracks in the snow on the hill here, and I've watched them follow the rabbit's scent. Close to the gate lays part of Fluffy's warm coat. Rabbit does not need it anymore, as he or she was eaten. He or she lived under the woodpile. The woodpile is one of the objects which make the hill interesting. Things are living there as well as in the brush pile. A few years ago, when I had burned the pile, I was cleaning up the large pile of ash. Deep down it was still warm. It was early spring. I will never forget that all of a sudden a beautiful snake poked its head up out of a wide crack in the soil. It rose, looked around, and withdrew. And I've never seen it again. Presently, I cannot burn the brush pile as rangeland is burned. I have a big pile, but must wait until May. Another regulation. I have to make sure that when I can burn, no songbirds have built their nests in there. Talking about nests, soon with the leaves out, you will not be able to find last year's remaining nests anymore. It's a time of new nest building, and it is fun to watch what birds carry to their new building sites as building material. A neighborhood park or yard, for that matter, should have the habitat to build nests. It's one reason I leave dead trees standing so the woodpeckers can have fun. I hear them hammer away, rat-a-tat-tat. Amazing how fast they can move their head like a chisel, opening a hole wider and bigger. Last week, Jacob, my grandson, mowed the prairie grasses on the hill here. He did a great job. The old, heavy-duty grass and brush mower started immediately after I changed the oil and greased it. I praised the mower. That must help. As good old Prof. Owensby says, if you cannot burn, mow before the 5th of May. I did, Prof. Now I walk the path and watch the prairie grasses and forbs come back. There are some old mouse trails from under the white snow. It was a safe way to travel for the mice. With the grass mowed, they have to be careful, especially as I have heard the owl, and yesterday I noticed a hawk's nest in the top of a dense growing cedar. Years ago, I pruned it up and placed a bench under it in the shade. The bench faces west, and I love to sit there at dusk as the sun sets behind the hills and the old stone wall with more cedars. I watch birds flying home, low across the meadow, and 30,000 feet high, I see the vapor trails of planes going west or east. Sometimes the evening sun shines on the fuselage, and the plane looks like a moving star. I've seen the hawk fly. It is the Cooper hawk. The nest is all that the book says it should be. Outside diameter, 20 to 25 inches. They like dense evergreens near clearings at the edge. In small evergreens, they tend to nest near the top of the tree. The nest is nearly always right next to the trunk. Hey, that's what I got. Isn't that exciting? Of course. They do hunt. They hunt some of the smaller songbirds. There always are risks.
Gus Vander Hoeven of Kansas State University with his weekly commentary on life in rural Kansas. That'll do it for our Wednesday edition. Thanks for tuning in. Eric Atkinson for Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.